I remember looking around and thinking to myself, I'm not drowning today. Hey everyone, and welcome to my second vlog. If you missed my first vlog where I explained why I'm doing this and you got to know me a little bit better, then you can click somewhere here to watch that one. But this week, I'm going to tell you the story of the craziest thing that has ever happened to me. So, despite the story I'm about to tell you, summer 16 was a great summer. I was 19, I was working at the spray tan studio to save up for my first semester of college, and I was hanging out with my friends. One Saturday night, I had plans with my friend from high school to go out and eat dinner at this restaurant at the mall. So Saturday night, I got ready, I drove 20 minutes to the mall, and I remember that it had been a really sunny day, and on my way to the mall, it started to sprinkle a little bit. But I didn't think anything of it because it rains, it's fine. That was warning sign number 1. So I get to the mall and I remember thinking, well, maybe I should park on the second level of the parking deck. That was warning sign number 2. But I didn't park on the second level of the parking deck. I parked in the first parking spot that I found because I was hungry. So I parked, I went into the restaurant, and I had a great dinner. The restaurant was kind of separate from the mall, but it was still in the mall. And I remember as we were finishing our food, looking out into the mall and seeing that there were lights flashing. That was warning sign number 3. And as the waitress brings us our bill, she says, if you're parked in that parking deck, it's flooding. So, of course, I started to panic just a little bit, but I was still pretty calm because I just noticed that the lights were flashing, and I figured they wouldn't let me sit here and finish my food like a fool if my car was drowning behind me. They did. That's exactly what they did. They let me finish my food like a fool. And fortunately, there was someone else at the table who was a lot more concerned because she asked the reasonable question, well, how high is the water? 2 feet. The water was 2 feet high. And to this day, I can't tell you if I paid for my food because I remember I stood up and I booked it out of there. So when I finally get into the mall, I realize that not only are the lights flashing, but also there's this big blaring alarm going off that sounds like the end of the world. And I get to the doors to the mall, and they automatically open for me like the gates of hell, and I see cop cars, I see fire trucks, I see 2 feet of water, and in the very back corner of that first level of that deck, I see Kyle the Kia drowning. Now, Kyle the Kia was not a great car. He was a 2011 Kia Rio gray. He was essentially a glorified golf cart, but I loved him. I got him just a couple of months after I turned 16. He was my first car, and there he was, drowning. So for any reasonable person, this is where the story ends. You know, I saw him drown, I was sad, but I stayed on the sidewalk and waited for my mom to come and get me. But for me, this is just the beginning. So I take off my Doc Martens and I roll up my ripped jeans like the edgy 19-year-old I am, and I wade out into the water. And at this point, I think I was in such a state of shock that I started to kind of disassociate from everything that was going on around me because I got out my keys, I unlocked the door, and I got in. I realized that not only is my car in 2 feet of water, but my feet are in 6 inches of water because it had gotten inside the cabin, and the water is still coming down from the sky, and it's coming up through the grates that are supposed to drain it away because the creek next to the mall was flooded, and it's coming out of my eyes because I did not know what the heck I was going to do. And for a lot of crazy people, this is where the story would end. Get out, go back to the sidewalk, wait for your mom to come and get you. But no, I remember looking around and thinking to myself, I'm not drowning today. So I get out my keys, I put them in the ignition, and all the lights come on. And so I'm like, okay, let's take it one step further. And I turn the key, and the car comes on. And I think, okay, let's take it one step further. And I release the parking brake, I throw it in reverse, and I start backing up. Now, luckily, my car was on like an incline, so as I was backing up, I was kind of backing up out of the water just a little bit. But unluckily, that incline was not a way out, it was dead end, so the only way that I was going to get out of the parking deck is if I drove through it. So I called my mom, and she was talking over the speakers in my car while I was scream crying and trying to explain to her what was happening. But there's absolutely no way she understood a single thing that I was saying, because what she heard was, "My car, I'm drowning. I don't know how to get out of the parking deck. I don't know what I'm going to do." And there was nothing she could do with that. So she was just trying to talk me down and understand the whole situation. And she was telling me, "No, Cece, like, don't drive, don't go," because she's a responsible mother. But me, being as strong-willed as I am, I said, "No, I'm getting out of here. I'm not drowning today." And I just said, well, here goes nothing. So when I tell you I was driving a submarine and it was coming up over onto the windshield and just kind of splashing away. And honestly, it would have been kind of beautiful if the water wasn't brown, because the creek that was coming up through the grates was polluted. So polluted that all the fish die. But I got out. I got out of the water and on my way to the exit of the parking deck. But I was definitely still crying. And this woman and her 4-year-old daughter came up to my passenger window and knocked on it to ask me if I was okay, which was honestly so sweet. And she said that her car was in there, but they were just waiting for her husband to come and get her because, like I said, that's what the rational people did. But at that point, I was on my way out. My feet were still underwater, like the pedicure that nobody asked for, but I was going home. I had to try not 1, not 2, but 3 parking lot exits, and it took me 40 minutes to get home instead of 20. But I pulled into my driveway at home, and I went in and I took a shower with some antibacterial soap, and I got out of the shower and I filed an insurance claim. The next day, some of my friends came over to help me scoop some water out, and we got most of my stuff out of it because the day after that, the tow truck came to haul it away. Part of me really thought that they were just going to fix it and I was going to get it back. But 2 days later, we get the call saying that Kyle the Kia was totaled. That was my car. That was my baby. That was Kyle. I did not want to see him go out like that. But what they told us was a lot of the electrical wiring for the car was underneath the carpet. And of course, the carpet was underwater. So in all of that, a lot of the electrical stuff had been fried. And so I'd accepted defeat. But there was more. They told me that after they'd finished their assessment and they decided that it was totaled, they turned the car off, they took the key out, and the car kept going. And that's my resilient little Kyle. So I did end up having to get a new car. His name is Fred. He's a Ford Focus. I love him just as much. But that's the story of the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. If you've ever had a similar situation happen to you, please let me know down below. Or let me know the craziest thing that's ever happened to you. So that's it for this adventure. And if you want to follow me on the rest of my adventures in storytelling, you can follow me everywhere at Cece Huffman. So that's it for today, and I'll see you next week.